And despite our best efforts with telephones and alternate laptops and various other things, we have not managed to get her. But we're very much looking forward to having her again very soon. So at the moment, it's yourself, well, myself, I should say, and you guys. That's Rachel's book, Temple House Vanishing. I'm going to pop it into the stream anyway, so you can see it. Yeah. There we go, and it goes out with the links to Eason's as well. So this is Rachel Donohue's book, Temple House Vanishing. She was going to be our debut author, but we, as I say, we can't manage quite to get her. So we are going to try her another day.
We are. It's going to be great.
And instead, you've just got us. So we might do a slightly shorter version this time, because time is against us. It's Friday the 13th, and every spanner that could be in the works has gone in. So
yeah, but actually, one thing I'd say, I've really enjoyed reading this week, and actually, I think we'll try and get her on next week, will we? Or
we've got Angie Marsens next week, I think, and maybe the week after next, in a couple of weeks.
But in which case, you can all go on and have a look on Amazon and or through bookshop.org.
Yeah, if you're in England, and Eason's if you're not.
And read some of the book, because it is absolutely fascinating. And Rachel is a great short storyist. I don't know if that's a word.
Incredible.
So there's an opportunity for you to do a bit of homework ahead of meeting her.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's great.
Sam, you had the opportunity to interview her for writing.ie this week, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, we did, actually, in Writers Inc. in our private Facebook group.
Yeah.
And we had some sound issues then too, actually, but it was great. She's so interesting because she won the Hennessy Prize, and she's a really big short story writer. She just absolutely, she's amazing, because she doesn't plot and plan. She tends to do, I don't want to say too much because it'll come, you need to talk to her when we're ready to get her to come on. But she is she's just incredible writer. She just writes, she's, I suppose, completely different to me, which is really great. So that's a lovely contrast.
That's always good, I think.
Yeah, from some of the other people. And so it just shows you that creative process is it's unique to everybody, and they still end up with the same result, which is a finished book. So so it'd be good to chat to her. But we've had a mad week this week. This is why it's Friday, because we've been running a page turner challenge over on Facebook, and we've had I think we had 100 people involved. We've got obviously our Writers Inc. crew, which is the private Facebook group for writers that we run from writing.ie, myself and Maria, and we've been doing a challenge all week. And Simon, you did some great tips, didn't you, for the challenge people?
If we could do screen share, I could actually show you the video, but
I don't think I'm going to try that today. I think that could be
I can certainly run through some of them in a moment, because I have some notes.
Indeed, but there were some great tips. So that's basically a writing group, and the idea of the Page Turner Challenge is just to basically build this community, because one of the things about this page and the people joining it and writing.ie and all the rest of it is it's fantastic, but it's very hard to talk to people and actually communicate on the same platform. So the idea of the Page Turner Challenge is it means a bunch of us can all come together.
I think since last week. And we've done so many of these interviews now. I have to say, I'm finding this really enriching, because actually, this lockdown thing is weird, and it's a bit lonely. And I have a lovely family, a lovely cat, Mr. Tumnus, and I go and get coffee every morning. But it is really lovely to have like 1 hour conversation a week, which is at times quite intellectually pushes the envelope a bit, and I think that's fun. And last week, who did we talk to last week? We've spoken to so many people. We had Jeremy Dyson 2 weeks ago, didn't we?
Oh, he was amazing. Yeah,
fantastic. Who did we talk to last week?
Don't know. I don't know. I can't remember. Somebody tell us. Somebody who was watching. That was Jeremy last week, wasn't it? Sorry, I have to take my glass off with smears on them. Honestly, if anything else could go wrong today, it really has. Yeah.
So I was in the week. I spent 2 hours talking to students from Bournemouth University from the MA in creative writing, and that was it was a slightly odd experience. It was like talking to myself for 2 hours, because
I know
that you're, as writers do, I think, I'm bringing all the energy, and there was literally nothing coming back at all. And,
I know that's because they were dazed listening.
I was a kind of crazy man talking to myself, which is on many levels kind of that's the story of what I do, but
that's what we do here.
But actually, I kind of realised, you know, that
Oh, it was Shane. Sorry, Shane Dunphy. We spoke to
of
last.
course, Shane, yeah, yeah.
Honestly.
How can we forget that? And
Sorry,
but
Shane.
yeah,
I'm just going to apologise because of the drama this morning. That just went
yeah.
out of my head.
No,
Sorry.
Shane was fantastic. That was a really interesting conversation because I think he managed to get his deal without an agent.
The first one, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's great. Really
And he's
interesting
writing
guy.
fiction and non-fiction, and I think that's actually the first Friday chat we've had where we've sort of gone into that kind of non-fiction area, and I
Yeah,
think really, really useful. I should also say one of the kind of alumni of our How to Win the Writing Game, the wonderful Kit Duvall. There was a half-hour program last night on BBC Two where she kind of took you behind the scenes of the Man Booker Prize, or the Booker Prize.
oh wow, I didn't know that was on.
Prime time on BBC Two, and she's, you know, fabulous. And that's something, I'm not sure wherever you are in the world, I think you can probably find it on iPlayer, but it was a great little program. And I've seen quite a lot of Kit this week because we had the judging meeting on Monday for the Costa Short Story Prize, and it was me, Adele Parks, Kit Duvall, Sarah Franklin, and Joe Haddo, and we read 52 short stories out of the 1,500, I think, originally it came in. And we had a judging meeting this week, and it was I even wore a dinner jacket. It was great. So what I'd say, the tips that I gave to your writing group yesterday, which I'm more than happy now to repeat. And then I see we've got a good question here from Panty, which we'll come back to in a minute.
Cool.
So my first point was, I'll do the Bridget Cody thing. Number one, don't try too hard to create a voice.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that a lot of people we've spoken to over the last many years of doing this on a Friday, it feels like. A lot of people, I think, work really hard and they try and create something that they think is going to be their unique voice. And I think sometimes what happens is you end up with a kind of slightly artificial process, and you end up with something which...
It's not something you can force.
No, you feel like you're reading a book that someone has kind of written. Whereas actually we all have a voice. And I think if you've done your groundwork on building a character, then you know, if you know your characters. I mean, Jeremy Dyson said this really well. I said about writer's block, and he said he doesn't really believe in writer's block because he thinks if you know your characters well enough and you know what room they've walked into, you're going to know how they're going to react. And I think and you will develop a voice without really overthinking it.
Actually, that was Shane, and Shane was saying about knowing if he went out to dinner with Donegan, his character, that he would know what he ordered and he knows what's in the wardrobe. And no, absolutely, I think the character then pushes you along. But I think the key thing about voice is that 10,000 hours. It's Malcolm Gladwell talks about to achieve that tipping point of success. Whether you're Beatles or whether you're a basketball player, that he did a whole load of analysis of it for his book Outliers, that you really need to do 10,000 hours worth of practice. And it's the same with writing. So your voice will come. I know for a fact the day I felt I was sitting down writing a book, and I know when I felt I was my voice arrived and I was really comfortable.
Cat Connolly books, was it?
No, it was actually a book before Little Bones. It was the one before Little Bones, and I literally sat down to write it. And it's when I think you stop worrying about the words and you just focus on the story, and the words will just flow. And then and you'll find that you're in your zone. I think what we do at the start when you're starting to write, you tend to mimic or think people you're reading unintentionally, and you're sort of it's unintentional, but you can see you're doing it. So the key is if that's happening, you're not there yet. It's a real sign. It's when you can just sit down and you write the story and you don't worry about the words. Then you'll find that that's really when you know you found your voice, and it just will all flow. But yeah, that's why Little Bones worked.
Second point was about storyboarding, and again we've been really privileged to spend time with a whole group of people, some of whom I think Kit and Adele plotted everything. They kind of knew exactly what was going to happen. And other people, who was it who made me laugh a lot? This is about character. Sophie Hannah just said, I know I don't work on the characters to begin with. They go where I tell them to go.
Yeah, exactly.
When they go do something, they go and do it. But I think storyboarding is a really useful thing. And what I talked about was if you get a DVD, shove it in the machine. Do you remember those days? A DVD is normally split up into chapters, like 22, 24, which clearly there is someone, the god of narrative is saying that you need to be able to break your story up into 22 or 24 or 25 chapters. So it's a good exercise, that, isn't it? So if you get your big A3 sheet, you know, put it on the wall and write, you know, beginning, end, what's going to happen.
Yeah,
and I think when we talked to AA Dan, he talked about color coding characters, so you could see when a character went in and out of scenes. And I thought that was well, I've been in Amit's workroom, and it's astonishing. You know, you feel like you've gone into a sort of control room for a, you know, I don't know, electricity company, even though the ebbs and flows of power coming on. And we need to put this.
That's great. Actually, Julie Cohen does that too. She does that. She uses colored post-it notes for different characters the same way he does. And we've got her coming up in December, so she's going to be. She just run an RNA ward last night, guys. So
did she?
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, she did. Julie Cohen, and her book is called Spirited, and it is fantastic. I adore it. So that's something to look forward to. But yeah, that whole plotting thing makes a. And you're talking about. I use a chapter bar chart thing. Which I think is on. If anybody's interested in seeing that, and they're either not in Writers Inc. or anywhere else, if you go to writing.ie and you put Sam Blake in, there's a Sam Blake article about plotting and planning, and I put in my, effectively, that's the 25 things. Actually, you tend to do 30, which is like a written storyboard, if you like. I make pictorial storyboards too. She's looking behind her for her prop. Because I think writing is very visual. So that's my storyboard for the Dark Room, which is coming out in January, with all the different people on it. So you can do that too.
Goodness me. Even girls' bedroom wall.
I tell you, there's all sorts of things on there, all sorts of famous people that I just take images of things that really resonate with me, and so I can help visualize the whole thing. But yeah, so that's a pictorial storyboard. So you can do both. But I think those post-it notes and pinning the post-it notes up, or creating I use this bar chart diagram yoke, whatever works. And one of our guys, I don't know who it is on here, uses Excel. So I was busy telling them about my tables in Word, and then somebody said, "Oh, do you know, I use Excel." And I thought that could be a step on.
Yeah, well, something I'd like to ask you at the end of my tip, Sam, is about, don't answer it now, answer it at the end, but I'd love to know about Scrivener, because a couple of people have mentioned that, and I don't know anything about that. Okay, so tip number, I can't know where the camera is, tip number 3.
Yeah.
So when you've looked at your storyboard, we're going to think about making every page count. And this is something which is slightly out of sequence here, but I remember, I think when I was talking yesterday or the day before, when you've got the draft of the book and you go through and you reread it, because that's when the real work starts, isn't it? You know, you get your gnocchi draft down, to quote Sophie Hannah.
Yeah.
And it's all about food writing, isn't it? Anyway,
it does seem to be. There's a lot of chocolate involved at our end.
And then you look at it. What you need to do is you need to measure each page of that draft against the storyboard. That seems a really important thing, because if you're we all have bits that we enjoy writing, but they shouldn't necessarily be in there just because we enjoy writing it.
I think the key is, isn't it, to make sure that you're moving the plot forwards, because you might actually, you might actually go off piece from your original storyboard. And I would plan out chapters in a lot of detail, and then actually the book at the end of it doesn't have any relation to it. But then I would go back and make sure that go back and look at each chapter that I do have, and change the storyboard to match, so then I can see if there's, you know, where the thing's progressing and if the highs and lows are in the right place. Because it's very hard when you've got 100,000 words to work out what you've got. But using that storyboard means you break it down to something very manageable. So yeah, it's great to check those pages, make sure every page is moving the plot forwards. Definitely, that's a really good tip.
I think if you have multiple characters, it's really good to look at, you know, because I think a lot of writers have too many characters in debut books. You know, if you've got 5 characters and you realize when you're plotting that one of the characters doesn't appear for 27 pages, you might want to address that, because you kind of visualize your book on your storyboard all at once. Most of us, you know, human beings, we're reading a book for 20 minutes and falling asleep. And then if 5 days later, 6 days later, we come back and Fred walks into the scene, we're all kind of going, remind me, who is he? What's his relationship to? So I think you need to think about that, particularly in a fast-paced contemporary, you know, in a thriller or something. I'm laughing
because that's exactly what I've just done in the draft of book 6. Exactly. So I
Okay.
left somebody in hospital in chapter 2, and when I got to chapter 40, I suddenly realised that she was still in hospital,
Yeah,
and
and the
so I had to
food's
go.
terrible there. You need to get
It
them
just
out.
Well,
It's not a
she
good
just got
environment.
left behind. We didn't even see her for 42. I then had to go back because this is the joy, I suppose, of the first draft and just getting the story down. When I got to the end in chapter 40, then I knew at least what was happening. So then I went back through and found the gaps where we needed to insert her. And as it turned out, when I wrote the last line, which I thought was the last line, I must have told everybody this about 600 times at this point, the last line of the book, the guy's phone rang, and literally the last line was, it wasn't the guards, it was Kate. And Kate is the girl that got left in the hospital, that my subconscious mind was telling me needed to get back into that story and had a big twist to add to the end. And I needed to go back and find out what her story was and weave it through. So listen to your subconscious mind. Yeah, and that's when storyboarding comes in really useful. Yeah.
I mean, Sally's made a good point. She just says, kill her. But we'll come back to that.
I can't. Oh no! Wait till you read it, Sally. Wait till you read it.
Yeah,
She is
I'm loving the fact that on my
final twist.
vision, we've got some great comments and questions coming up here. Okay, something that Sophie Hannah does when she's writing a book, she writes. This is one of hers. This is Rachel.
Yeah.
She writes this bit first.
The blurb.
So if Rachel was following the Sophie Hannah thing, the first thing that she would write would be, when 16-year-old Louisa arrives at elite Catholic boarding school, Temple House, she's quickly drawn to sophisticated fellow pupil Victoria and their young bohemian art teacher, Mr. Lavelle. The three of them form a seemingly unbreakable bond until Louisa and Mr. Lavelle suddenly disappear without trace. And then there's one more paragraph about 25 years later and what happens. And I think that's pretty good, because if you can kind of sum the book up in that thing on the back, and then you storyboard that intention, you've made a huge amount of progress. Because I kind of think I know what that I kind of know where that book's going to go, because it fits within a genre. But believe me, when you start to read it, it busts that genre all over the place, which is great.
Totally.
But I think that's a really good exercise. And actually, it might be a good writing exercise is, don't worry about writing a book. Just see, can you write a synopsis of the back of a book you may never write and make it compelling? It's a really interesting. So that's another one of my tips.
It's a really good tip, because that's what I would do when I'm sending you ideas to the books, and when we're getting something together. That's what I do, is write those couple of paragraphs, isn't it, and send them over to you. Panty's got a really good question here.
But yeah.
No, thank you. Criticise my synopsis. Okay, Panty's got a really good question. Can you tell whether a book, with a finished novel, whether it's been plotted or pantstered? And no, you can't.
Once it's been after the tips, but
but once it's been, I just wanted to get in there because they're flying through, so we're going to miss them. But when you get to the end, when you've redrafted that book, like I would be redrafting 3 or 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. And last night we were talking to Andrea Mara, and she did 18 drafts of her last book, Sleeper Lies. So when you've got to that stage, you can't tell whether it's plotted or not.
It kind of depends, though, what a draft is. I mean, I'm kind of John Boyne's first or second reader, and I think he does fewer drafts than he used to. But I think because he's written so many books now, he's like an elite athlete. He probably doesn't need to train every day.
No, you don't need to do as many when you.
Okay, so number 5. I say, and this obviously there's a leap of imagination here, because it starts with stand in a bookshop. I don't know if you remember those bookshops.
Yeah.
But stand in a bookshop and think about where your book might sit on the shelves. So this is my crazy bookcase here, and I've got all along here. These are all Virginia Woolf books or Bloomsbury Group books. So you need to think in a bookshop. Is your book going to be in the crime section, the thriller section, the literary fiction one, whatever? Bookshops are really poor.
Sorry, something just weird just happened to your sound. We can still hear you, but just whatever you've pressed.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, that's better. You're all right. You're back with us now.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that bookshops are, if they have one copy of your book, where is it going to sit on the shelf? And I love books that mix genre. I love David Mitchell. I love Cloud Atlas. I love Stephen Hall, Rorschach texts, Scarlett Thomas. But, if your debut novel's kind of got to sit somewhere. And I think that's a good way of thinking about it. If you're trying to make everybody's lives a bit difficult at this stage, then the likelihood is you're going to make the barrier to entry a little bit too high for you to get into the marketplace. So just think very carefully about what kind of book it is you are writing, and make sure it kind of fits the fits the rules for that book. I'm looking
Yeah.
up because there's obviously the Christopher Booker 7 Plots book, which we mentioned the whole time. But,
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so those were my tips, and I think what we'll do is if we scroll, which I can do here, and let's just take them in order, shall we, Sam?
The questions, yeah.
So I've got Panti Kaka here. I don't think we've had any questions from Panti before, so welcome. Thank you for joining. If anyone's joining now, neither of us are Rachel Donahoe.
Yeah, exactly. And we might be doing a slightly shorter broadcast than normal because quite a lot going on this week.
So Panti's saying, how important do you think doing a creative writing degree might be to a budding writer? Well, look, for a start, not everybody has the luxury of being able to do one, affording one, the time, whatever. I think any kind of peer review of your manuscripts and any kind of busting out of it being a lonely business is a good thing. And the person next to me on the screen has some incredible initiatives that you could join, and there are various courses out there. But I just think, the more views you have on your own work, it's a good thing, and the more, it shouldn't be too comfortable a process writing. I mean, I think we've had a lot of very successful writers talking about their sheds and classical music in the background and all of that. I think as a debut writer, you're kind of in the rain trying to write yourself back into the warmth and the dry, aren't you? And I think creative writing is a good thing. Sam?
I think degrees are amazing, but I do think they're a huge luxury. I think a creative writing degree isn't necessarily going to teach you how to write commercial fiction. It certainly will teach you a lot in terms of, hopefully it will teach you a lot in terms of technique, but you can pick up that technique in other places. So if you don't have access to the time and the money to do a creative writing degree, writing.ie has tons of stuff.
Yep.
There are, I mean, literally it's all there. So and it's learning the techniques that's important. So that's what I think a lot of people think they're going to get out of a creative writing degree. So it's technique that you need to learn. You just need to put the work into. So it's writing the book and rewriting the book and writing the next book, and keeping moving forward. So I think creative writing degree is a wonderful thing to do. And I've been looking at doing MS things in Trinity and all sorts of things, because I think I would adore that for the indulgence of being able to do it. But it's not something you have to do in order to write a book. No. I don't know. I know a couple of people have got them and they've loved doing them, but and I know teachers on them, and they're most amazing. And we've got some fantastic ones here. Joseph O'Connor in Limerick is working with Donal Ryan. I mean, what a combination. So there are some incredible degrees out there, but they'll teach you different things. It depends what you want. I suppose it depends what your objective is. And I think that's really important to work out what it is that you want.
I don't think creative writing courses can teach people how to write. I think they can teach people to write better. And I think it's about honing your skills. I'm not sure whether if you don't have the skills, I'm not sure if you can. It's not like learning to drive a car. I don't think. But
yeah, I think I'm a believer that you can probably get there. You might not be able to get to a publishable standard, but you can get to a stage where you enjoy it. And I think it's all to do with the definition of success. If you just enjoy writing, you have to write because you love it, because you are never going to get paid for it. There's only the very few lucky people who get paid buckets of money for doing it. So you
like with anything,
and anything. But
a lot of people can sing really well, but they're not on X Factor or they get a record.
Exactly. So you definitely I mean, and with a bit of luck, then you'll be able to make a nice living at it. But it's not something you have to do because you love it, because you're never going to get the hours that you have to put in to get to the point of actually making it, being commercially publishable and all of those things. Is significant, and the amount of time you put into writing a book is significant too. So, so I think it's to do with definition of success. But I was talking to somebody the other day who was just saying that they just love writing, and that's the most important thing. You have to love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think somebody, I'll try and Google it, or maybe somebody can. There's a great quote from someone saying, "I hate writing, but I love having written." And it may be Hemingway. He kind of says all the great things about. Write drunk, edit sober, or was it the other way around? Be an interesting exercise, wouldn't it? Anyway, Sally Cuthbert, who is a very loyal follower of us on Friday, says, "I feel like voice is this ephemeral thing. I never feel it's there until I look back later over a piece, and then it's like, oh, hello. as soon
Yeah.
as I become conscious of it, when I'm writing it, it disappears. I think that's
Yeah, don't think about it. That's exactly what you were saying. Don't think about it. Just do it, and it'll be there. And so when you look back, what's really interesting when you do challenges, and when you do the, say, in Writers Inc., when you've got like a lot of people writing short pieces, you can see the changes in voice. I don't think you're necessarily conscious of voice when you're reading a novel. You just feel it. It feels like it's just a different book. But in fact, when you see lots of bits together, then you can really see the voice. Yeah, and everybody has one. You're so right on that. Definitely.
So Sally Cuthbert is saying, I do find the Save the Cat app really useful for storyboarding. Does anyone know about Save the Cat?
Save the Cat's an amazing screenwriting book. We've been talking about it in Writers Inc. actually. It's got a great cat on the front. There's Save the Cat for the novel, and there's also Save the Cat for screenwriting. And Catherine Ryan Howard swears by it actually as well. And Sally has mastered the app. I have no idea how you do that or how it works, but she is. She's obviously got the hang of it. You have to do actually, Sally, you're going to have to do an overview of how to use the app and how you use it for writing.ie. Perhaps we need to get a few of you together to come and put together an article about your top tips for using different tools, and we can do one for Scrivener too, because that'd be really interesting. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that would be a very, not in this current season, but it'd be very interesting to do like a week where we just focus on software and actually had some demonstration. It'd be really fun. Yeah.
I'm laughing because you're the tech one. You're super techy, and I'm the one that's always bringing up the rear with the bits of paper. So it's we could definitely. I'd have to work out how to use the app. That's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, well,
no, definitely.
It's always good to do something that
it is stretch yourself. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Widow shins in all of us, go counterclockwise to what we want to do.
Exactly.
Okay, so there's PowerPoint as well. Okay, so Panty again, it's saying, do you think you can tell from a finished novel whether the author was a plotter or a pantser?
That's what I interrupted.
Not a phrase I'd ever heard until who said pantser? Was it Joanne?
Was it Joanne, or was one of the early people? Yeah.
Which I imagine means like by the seat of your pants.
Of your pants, absolutely. Yeah, I think it might be an Irish phrase actually. I don't know if it's in everybody's phrase, but it's definitely one we use a lot here.
Yeah, I'm looking across a lot of words this week. Do you know about exegesis?
No, what's that mean?
I think it's about a sort of critical analysis of a particular part of a word or a phrase. Exegesis.
Oh my goodness.
I think, widdershins and exegesis. You think it's quite interesting when writers. I was thinking about this with Owen Colfer, where some writers just sort of, they'll either create their own language, which becomes part of their voice, or they find these wonderful words out there. I think Pullman does that as well, and J.K. Rowling certainly. And I think there's a real joy, isn't there, in, you say, why do people do this? It's because we all kind of love language, don't we?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think just going off on a tangent, but just going back to Pantsy, do I know whether the author was a plotter or a pantser? Okay, well, I'll tell this story, which I don't think I've told before, but I remember years ago getting approached by this thriller writer, and I read the book, and it was kind of okay, but didn't really do anything for me. So I rejected it, and I got this really indignant letter back, tells you how long ago this was, telling me I was wrong to reject the book. And I was like, just rejected it. Why am I wrong to do that? And he said he'd analysed the top 10 best-selling thrillers of whatever it was, 1999, and he'd plotted them all on a graph. So, he had pages, 1 going through to 100, and then and it was like, cliffhanger, sex scene, fight, whatever. And he created a kind of average novel, which obviously then fitted this. And then he'd written his novels so that on page 8 there was a sex scene, and on page 4, because that was the average best-selling book of the previous year. Now, quite clearly, the novel was overplotted to within an inch of its life, and it was utterly soulless. It was like, it was like a sort of hollow egg. It kind of looked like a book, but when you opened it, there was literally nothing inside.
I think the fundamental problem was that he couldn't write as well. He couldn't.
No, it was competent. It was absolutely fine, but it was overplotted, and there was nothing there. Now, if he'd just gone off and written the book he probably wanted to write, I think who knows? It would have been
be
And I
great.
think, and do I know? I think there are some high concept books where you think this next scene is what I'd file under the because of some plot bit, rather than this is where the character needs us to go because that's what the character's doing. So yeah, I think I probably can, but I think what happens is when a book goes through the editorial process, by the time it comes out, hopefully all of that's been ironed out.
Yeah,
And the
by the
editors,
time you've done multiple drafts, I don't think you can tell the difference necessarily,
no,
because if you're a good writer, I mean, the draft you submit to your editor, regardless, like Hazel doesn't plot and plan. She finds a way. Now she writes a lot of extra words that she has to then take out. And I know Monica McInerney's the same. She writes the most amazing books. She's complete pantser, and she just sits down and writes. And I remember interviewing her and her saying that she once wrote 40,000 words and ended up down a rabbit hole. And she was in the wrong direction. And she went back and she had to take out, that's a half a book, had to take those away. But in those 40,000 words, found one paragraph of pure gold that she would never have got to if she hadn't written those bits. So I think basically the thing is, if the end product, the bit you read as a reader, you shouldn't be able to tell because everything will be smooth and so the flow is right, the reveals are right, the inciting incident and all the rest of it. We were talking about that last night. All of those things, the resolution, they're all in there and in the right places. But that's what the redrafting does, and that's why rewriting is the key to writing. And it's that rewriting process. Whatever you start with, whether it's bare bones like scaffolding, structural stuff, or whether it's just free flow prose, whatever you start with, what you end up with, it shouldn't be possible to tell.
I sometimes talk about scaffolding. I sometimes say to authors, if they're doing something, sometimes time is what is quite difficult to signal. And I sometimes say, oh, look, you know what, this is taking place over 2 weeks. It doesn't feel like 2 weeks at the moment. Why don't you, at the beginning of each chapter, put, Monday, 09:54 a.m., the airport, or whatever it is, and then Tuesday. And then just putting that in actually does something. And then I kind of find at the end of it, if the book works, you can take the scaffolding away and the book stays up. If you
That's
haven't got it
exactly
right,
what
the
I
book
do.
goes, and
Yeah.
you think,
Yeah, that's exactly what I do, because I tend to change the timeline when I've written that first draft and I'm going back to add chapters. The timeline can you find you're slotting in chapters, and unless you know exactly what the timeline is and you can't remember it, then you can make awful mistakes. I regularly make a mess of my timeline.
okay.
So
So we've now
structural stuff really helps.
we've got another Hemingway quote here from Bob. Hi, Bob. Hemingway said that what people call his voice was actually his consistent awkwardness in his writing.
Yeah,
Well,
that's just that's great. I love Hemingway.
Yeah, somebody did some analysis of the editorial column written in Fleet Street newspapers in the 1950s, and they worked out that all of them were written under the influence of alcohol. Because what would happen is the journalists would all go out to the pub, and then someone would go, "Oh my God, deadline's in an hour," and they'd rush back drunk and write, this nation, objects to blah blah blah, and then it would go. So I think it's a good thing we should look for drunk writing. Okay, so
yeah, my dad used to work for the Telegraph, and I have all sorts of stories. People going into the lift with a turkey and coming out the top and having lost it at Christmas.
Definitely. Jackie is saying the narrator voice didn't arrive for me until after the 67,000 draft. What does that mean? Does that mean the draft?
67, yeah. So she was writing, and it took that many words. Actually, yeah, and it took that
there
for
was
the voice.
drafts, surely. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, for the voice to arrive. Yeah. Actually, Sally's jumping in here just to follow up on the creative writing question. If anybody wants to talk to anybody about the different types of courses, BA, MA, PhDs, that's what she does. Yep. So definitely. And she said she agrees you can't teach someone to write, but you can help them learn about the craft precisely. Yeah. So, and it's just wonderful. If you've got the time, I'd love to do one of those. It'd be great.
Dave Bending is saying, I believe Jack Kerouac, who wrote On the Road, stated he wrote it in one draft only, yet his wife dismisses, admitting he'd edited it many times over. I mean, I don't think unfortunately, we haven't got the luxury of having Jack on the show, but I mean, I suspect that what he meant was he didn't rewrite yesterday, today, he just wrote it. And that can create an energy. I know.
Or maybe he did.
Maybe, I mean, I used to represent the estate of Ian Fleming, and I know that Ian Fleming he would write 1,500 words a day, and he wouldn't look at any of the book until the end of it. So, you know, you'd write 1,500 words, have a cigar and a brandy, probably
Yeah.
shoot the dark, you know, jump off an aeroplane, and then the next day write the next bit. And at the end of it, he'd read the whole book again. And I think that's another way of doing it. Chloe Carey
In Nova Scotia, close in Nova Scotia.
Oh, right. Is saying, what is the best way to find beta readers? So
that's a very big question.
Yeah, it is. And Sally said, I presume this is answering that question. Some of them are terrible, some are brilliant. It depends on what you want from the degree. Okay, this is talking about creative writing courses.
Yeah. The beta readers are a tricky one, because you want people who, I think you want writers to beta read, because writers understand what it is that makes a book work. A reader will read a book and they will love it, but because they don't understand the mechanics behind that's going on behind the bits that's hidden, the bit that are hidden is the bottom part of that iceberg, they'll go, well, I really don't like that character, or this bit didn't work for me, or I really hated that, or whatever it is, they didn't work for them, but they can't tell you why. Whereas a writer can read something and immediately tell you why that's not working. You know, you're showing too much, or you're telling too much instead of showing, I should say, or, you know, the dialogue isn't natural, or that you know, what could have to. I was just thinking that CSI. I think we're talking about people. Characters telling each other things they already know for the benefit of the reader, which always feels massively artificial. And I remember seeing the best example of this. I remember watching CSI, and the two detectives are standing next to a grass verge by the side of the road, and one detective says to the other, "Look, he went this way. There are the footprints, and there are the footprints in front of them." Now, if one detective needs to say that to the other one for the benefit of the viewer, we are all in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's the type of thing you're really trying to avoid.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of radio drama, and you know, it makes me laugh when you know, at some point in the play that the scene starts and someone goes, "Okay, just run me through that one more time." Or someone says, "So just to be clear, what you're saying is this."
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, really, come on. In fact, we should have a prize for the work. So there's a really nice comment from Duncan. Thank you really very much for this, saying these Friday sessions are like doing an ongoing creative writing course.
Oh, that's lovely.
Well, I think when we start, we should actually at some point we should gather together nice things people have said about this, because it's a, you know, it's a good thing.
Yeah. But I learn. Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you. I learn something every week, literally.
Yeah,
I've been doing this a long time, and I started Inkwell originally because I wanted to learn how to write better. I brought best-selling authors into the room, and I've sat through more creative writing workshops than anybody I think else on the planet. And I literally learn everything, and I still learn everything every single time a writer speaks. Yeah. So it's you know, you never stop. It's great.
Yeah, I kind of learned like how to keep my cat out of the room. You know, anyway. So Gillian is saying, there is a trend for books to open with the ending and then take the reader back through the story. Is this because agents only take the first chapters and it adds sensationalism, i.e. more likely to be noticed? I remember working with one author, and they wrote the book and it was great, and they sent it into the editor, and the editor had one note, which was the book was 300 pages. They said, just page 151 needs to be, just take the second half of the book, make it the first half of the book, and swap it around, and it worked brilliantly. I don't know, sometimes I think it is about capturing people's imagination and going, you know, there is a scene when something is happening, and then you cut away from it and you go back, and then your subliminal is going, how does this story connect with that thing at the beginning? You know, and it's just a little sort of moment, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm just rereading that comment and taking the reader back through the story. Yeah, I don't think it's to do with agents only taking the first few pages.
No, I don't do that.
Generally now, agents want you to submit the whole manuscript, and if they like it, because they're reading on their Kindle, they're not having to worry about the pile of paper on their desk anymore.
The agent has different rules, don't they?
Yeah, everybody does, but generally, it's not to do with the first two chapters, because anybody who's going to accept a book is going to read the whole thing. And they might want changes and do all sorts of things. But it's funny how you get trends, because you do get trends. And as a reader, you think, oh, this is a trend. But actually, it's just like the zeitgeist. There was a whole wave of women's fiction books that were all called like number 42 something and number 13 this, and like literally a whole battle of them. And then there were a whole load of women's fiction books as well, just the ones that stick in my mind, about baking. Shops, Hat Shop on the Corner with Marisha Colin McKenna, and a whole load of them, and they come in trends, and you think that that's a trend. It's the same with, I suppose, werewolves and wizards and things like that, that you suddenly get back to them together, and it's actually it's just a zeitgeist. And it's really strange because I work with a lot of unpublished people. Obviously, Simon obviously is reading masses and masses of manuscripts, and you see them coming through, and you suddenly get a trend, and you get 3 or 4 together that are all very similar and have similar stories. These people don't know each other, and it's just something that's happened. Maybe they've seen the same newspaper. I don't know what it is. Football thrillers. I got a little run on football thrillers once.
Football thriller.
Yeah, thrillers set in football stadiums. I mean, what are the chances? That's just like, it was the first one that came in. I was like, this is so different. And then there were 3 of them, and it was just like, this is so bizarre. So yeah, so trends aren't.
Two halves, I think, writing those kind of books, isn't it?
Say again, what?
The game of 2 halves, writing football thrillers. Narrative for goalposts, I think, you know. Okay.
Started you now.
So Helen is saying they did that on The Simpsons. Do you mean The Simpsons? And got together as a group using all kids' books cliches, and it became a success. Lisa tried to be original and struggled and failed. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Simpsons is brilliant. Yeah, that's. I think that you can do that on TV. It's a different type of a thing, isn't it? Getting together everything.
Helen is saying, I think writing is more important than doing a course. I think it shows an insecurity because you think they give you some magic secret formula that you'll write your novel for you. I mean, I hope that what we've done over the last 24 weeks, I believe it is now, it's an entire day of us talking, is I think what we're all trying to do is we're trying to show everybody possibilities and ideas, and they don't. And I think what's going to work for one person doesn't work for somebody else. And I think, you know, if you listen back to everything, I guarantee everybody will have 2 or 3 transformative things for their writing, and there'll be 20 that they go, that just doesn't work for me.
That doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
And I think that's great. You know, actually, we should maybe when we get to the end of the year, we should get everybody to say what was the one tip that you've learned in the last.
That would be great.
You know, and then we can put together a kind of collective top 10. I think it'd be really fun.
Yeah, or top 20.
12 days of Christmas.
We can do that.
12 tips of Christmas would be fun, wouldn't it?
Say that again.
12 tips of Christmas. We'll just get the top 12 things.
We can actually definitely do that. Look out, guys. Anybody who's tuning in, look out for a post on that. I'll put a post on writing.ie and put it in the comments, and we'll create a page for the website. That's the key thing. The absolute key thing with all of these videos and the whole process and all the rest of it is for you to develop your own process, because creativity is individual. Yes. Every single book is individual. Every single, you know, everything is unique about a book. And you know, and it's because, you know, we see it particularly when we're doing prompts in the writing groups, because we give everybody the same picture and they all come back with completely different things. And that's you bringing your lifetime experience as well as everything you've learned about writing to the story, plus the prompt, plus all the things you've heard and all the influences. And so learning technique or finding a technique that suits you, it has to be completely individual too. And so everybody's different, you know, and you'll find bits that work and bits that don't work. And everybody's different, you know, and that's what's fascinating. That's what's brilliant about it. And that's what makes your job interesting in terms of waiting for the next exciting thing to come through, because you just never know what it's going to be, because everybody's so different. Yeah.
Okay, so other questions we've got here. We've got D. Scanlon. You get the benefit from the expertise of an agent as well as authors. Well, that's not a question, but it's a lovely statement. So thank you very much for that. 300 words has to me to have been the game changer.
Yeah, tell you, that's
Amanda. Remind me who the 300 was. That was
Joanne Harris.
Yeah.
Well, I was in the shed with her yesterday at a board meeting, and she's just brilliant. That is an absolute game changer. I think I'm never going to stop quoting that, because it just is that and Hazel's 5 minutes, actually. Because when Hazel was saying that when she sits down and she needs to write, she says, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes. And that takes the pressure off. I think we put ourselves under a huge amount of pressure. And that can create blocks, and it can create problems. And, you know, I've got to write this book, and I'm looking blank, it's going to have to be brilliant. And all of that. Don't worry about any of that. Just sit down for 5 minutes, do the 300 words. Don't worry about it. Just get the story down. And that's the whole thing about writing. And there's a great quote, I have a little graphic of it that says, one of the wonderful things about writing is that you don't have to get it right first time, like brain surgery. You know, it isn't brain surgery. It's not the X Factor where you get one opportunity to go out there on the stage and get it right. The whole wonderful thing about this process is that you redo it and you redo it. You know, the draft I've just finished, you're not going to see until it's been through two or three more drafts. and hopefully it'll be in shape, good shape by then. But you wouldn't ever dream of showing anybody an early draft. I hope not, anyway. Before you fix it up. Excuse me. So that's the joy of it. You don't put yourself under pressure.
So Panty's talking about having listened to a David Nichols talk on Arbon at Home, and I think that's he's definitely on our wish list. I think it'd be great to talk to him.
Oh yeah, he lives in Cork.
Does he?
Yeah.
So Dave is saying it's surprising or not how many notes under the influence of drink actually work. It's to open the subconscious, as long as you don't try to write anything sensible. That's interesting. Okay, I'm not sure if there's probably a TV format and kind of writing drunk to see what people actually do. But
there is. Sorry, Gillian's just asking us to remind what the 300-word tip is. So basically, Joanne Harris sits down in her shed. You've all seen her shed where she does her amazing Twitter tips from. I think it's #10tips. So look for those on Twitter. They're brilliant. And she's written I'm just diversifying. She's written a book. Her 10 tips from the shed book, and you definitely should Google that. Just put Joanne Harris into whichever search engine you use for books, and you'll find it really, really good. It's basically a compilation of the 10 tips from the shed, which have been coming since she started on Twitter. But she recommends, she wrote Chocolat. She's written an amazing number of books. I can't even remember how many, of all sorts of different genres. Didn't she write a Doctor Who book too? She wrote Doctor Who book.
Yeah. But I mean, she writes, Gothic. She writes kind of, cross-genre stuff. She's written children's.
Amazing.
She's very well known for the French novels.
Yeah, but her tip is that she literally sits down to write 300 words a day, and that's all she does.
And then Helen Broderick's saying, if you write 300 words a day, it takes you 333.3 days to write a 100,000 word novel. So if you write 300 words a day for a year, you've written a 100,000 word novel.
Yeah, exactly. Write a book in a year.
I mean, who can't write 300 words in a day?
Exactly. You always can.
It's the annual version of NaNoWriMo, isn't it? It's National Novel Writing Year, and you do 300 words a day. Sounds pretty good to me.
Sounds great. Yeah, it's very doable. So it just means you take away that sort of that fear that maybe you won't manage it or you won't do your word count or whatever if you give yourself something really easy to do. And one of the key things to this whole business is setting yourself achievable objectives. Don't say I'm going to sit down and write a book in 3 months, or I heard somebody else saying that they sat and they wrote, James Patterson wrote whatever it was in. Don't do that. Just do what suits you, and take the pressure off, and let the creativity has to come. You have to give the story time. Somebody last night actually in our Page Turner challenge was saying that they felt one of the things was very difficult and they were blocked and they didn't quite know where it began or anything, but often it takes time for a story to evolve. I can start off with a bit of a story and I literally know now through experience, I just have to wait for the rest to arrive. It can be a bit unnerving, it has to be said, but it's, you've got to give, creativity takes time. It's that percolation is so important. Sorry.
So Dave is asking whether is there any possibility of getting Josephine Moulds on? Well, I don't know. Why not?
There might be. There might well be. Sure, ask her.
Josephine won the debut dagger at the Crime Writers Association Awards about 3 weeks ago, and I'm working with her. So, I mean, it'd be I think we've talked about working with someone, having someone on right at the beginning of their career. I think that'd be an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, that was our idea. That was our plan today.
Well, we'll get back to that. So Amanda is saying it takes a lot of pressure off, and once you sit down, you tend to write novels. You tend to write more, but even if you don't, you've got an additional. I think it's kind of money in the bank, isn't it? If you do 301 words, it's great.
Definitely.
Panty says my word count was 3 yesterday, but I do find the Scrivener daily reset button helpful normally.
Don't tell anybody, Panty, but I haven't written anything for about 10 days. Don't tell him. So don't worry.
Not your novel.
Well, I haven't written not the book. No, been writing all sorts of other things.
And I think that the word insecurities come here. Yeah, it's really insecure. It's a really insecure world being a writer, but that's a good position to write from. I think
it is.
Write from comfort. You just get lazy, I think.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. How important is the subconscious? Max is asking. Vital. I think everything comes from the subconscious. Absolutely everything. And that's the bit that does the churning and does the story production and gets you the bits of the character and Maria McHale, who's my partner in Writers Inc., has had a brilliant quote from Robert Louis Stevenson, and he used to talk to his subconscious a lot, and he used to say that every time he went to bed, he'd go to bed and ask his subconscious for an idea that would be both profitable and marketable by the morning. I think that's great. So yes, it's all in the subconscious. That's it.
So
That's the bit that does it. That's the
So
work.
asking Sam Blake a question here, do you dream about your characters? Do you kind of wake up thinking, oh, hang on, that
I
character
used to.
get there or does do this or whatever?
I used to, but then you forget everything. That's the problem. It's like writing speeches. I do the best speeches just as I'm falling asleep. It's all perfect. And then the next morning when I go up and have to do the speech, it's like a disaster. But no, I actually find the best time is when I'm doing something that's instinctive, like say driving. It's terrible to say that. I'm going to get arrested. Or Agatha Christie used to doing the washing up when she was, when you're doing something and you're active, but you've switched, you've got a bit of your mind free. And I managed to drive past my son's school this morning. So today started off on a really good note because we were late leaving. And then I actually drove past the turning to go to the school because I was thinking about something else. So this, I wouldn't recommend driving and working on your story at the same time. But that's when I do it. Yeah, let's subconscious work.
We're getting towards the end of our hour, but Helen is saying, how about getting in an editor from a publishing house? There's a really, really good interview with Catherine Tausig from Bookouture, which sounded that's well worth watching again. I think we've kind of stepped back from doing that right now because there are so many writers we want to talk to, and I think trying to do things which are most useful to all of you watching this. I think the editor is I think there's a kind of bit of a danger there. If we talk to an editor about their particular preferences, you may end up kind of writing a book for that editor. And I think what you need to do is write the book for yourself, get an agent, but we will get on to the professionals. But I think right now that we've got a lot of writers to get through.
Panels are always good with editors, so that if you look at some of the festivals I do, I quite often bring in a panel of editors where I bring 3 or 4 in, and then they're really interesting when they talk to, when they're getting a cross section then of different bits and pieces. So look out for those.
Sally again is talking about writing 1,500 words and delete more than 2/3 some days. Pop them in the bits folder. Well, I think again, Mr. Colfer, when he was talking about Artemis Fowl, he had loads of stuff in the bits.
Yeah,
I think when he was writing a book down there, anything, I'm sure I've written a scene I never used where I could do this, and then you find it and use it. I mean, I'm not saying it's not like you're writing a novel from the sweepings up on the floor, but it is good to know there's something in the store cupboard if you need it, even if it's
definitely. It's never wasted. It's never wasted. And the thing is about it's like Monica writing her 40,000 words and finding one paragraph. You've got to write those 1,500 words in order to move the story forwards, to find the way. If you're that type of writer and you're doing the percolation on the job, if you like, and following letting your fingers do the work, which is a wonderful way to find story.
Yeah, I mean,
then you're going to have to write extra words.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, I was writing some fiction a few years ago, and I wrote something, and I thought this is really good, but it felt really, really familiar. And I flicked back through my notes and realized I'd written virtually the same paragraph a year earlier.
I do that in the same book. Never mind.
Oh my God, I think it's interesting when I read books. Sometimes, if you read something out loud and you realize, the same word has been used twice in a paragraph, not intentionally.
Yeah, jars.
Just a jar. And if it's used intentionally as a reader, you can sense that.
The rhythm.
I love thinking about music and about orchestrations. You've got the top line and the melody, and then there's the orchestration, and you can hear the same song in 2 different versions, and there's a little bit of, maybe there's a flute used somewhere, just a little flourish, and there's an intention for that. And I think a good novel is like a well orchestrated melody, isn't it?
Yeah.
You start with the top line, and then you end up with this orchestra and all this stuff going on around the edges. And I can take one of my favorite songs, and I know there are versions of it I hate because whatever's been going on in the background doesn't quite work. And I think if the melody is the idea at the beginning, and the fully finished book is the orchestrated symphony version of that, it doesn't take much, does it, just to sort of slightly pull back on something or to add something. And I think there's a lot to learn from listening to music.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really good analogy.
Watching films as well.
Yeah, I love the thing about words is that the playing around with the words and rewriting the words can give something completely different meaning, which is
Yeah,
exactly what you're saying there about some words can jar if they're repeated unintentionally, but if they're intentionally repeated, I love that you get a lyricism and a rhyme into the
yeah.
book. The best illustration of that for me, I'm always using this in workshops, is that description of the Wizard of Oz. We all know the Wizard of Oz movie, that it's, you know, Dorothy and it's Toto and there's the Yellow Brick Road, and we've got lots of the Munchkins singing and there's lots of magic and various things happen. But a satirical what's the word, journalist, like film critic, wrote a brilliant sort of overview of the Wizard of Oz. And he basically described it as a girl lands in a surreal land, I think, kills the first person she meets, teams up with 3 friends to kill again. And that actually is the plot of The Wizard of Oz, but it's completely different from what we would recognize. And it just shows you how using different words and
Yes.
give a completely different impression of something. And that's why those blurbs are so important, and rewriting them and fiddling around with them, because you can completely not misrepresent, re-represent, change the perception of something by the words you choose.
Yeah.
And that's what rewriting is all about, really, I think.
I mean, I'd say that's absolutely brilliant, and I've just looked it up. It's a writer called Rick Polito.
Yeah, that's it.
You got
Yeah,
it
I've got the image. Yeah,
You got it almost identical, transported to a surreal landscape. A young girl kills the first person she meets, teams up with 3 strangers to kill again. And
yeah.
Rick Polito told some website, he said, that line is going to follow me to the grave.
Tell you, I quote it every single workshop I do. I just think it's such a way of showing you, and quite often I used to do it before people knew I used to use it. I used to read it out and say, what film is that? Tell me. And usually there's one person in the room that gets it. But it's just, to me, Wizard was one of my favorite movies, and it's just so different. So it just shows you what you can do with cleverly drafted words.
If you just Google Wizard of Oz plot kill again, then it's the first thing that comes up.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Really, really clever.
So I say, I think we're coming to the end of our hour, but we were going to be joined by the fabulous
Rachel Duncan.
And we will
get it back again,
and we'll let you know what the new schedule is very soon. And Rachel, I think you are watching us, and it's been great. We plugged your book many times. People are going to read it. We're going to see you soon. It's going to be fabulous.
Yeah, I'm going to pop it in again.
I've really enjoyed this. It's been nice. Just
there you go. Yes. That's the link to Eason, so you can all read it in advance now. Temple House Vanishing. Beautiful book. And Rachel is also a newcomer of the year, shortlisted. I've said that in the wrong order. Irish Book Awards. So you can go and vote. So go to the Irish Book Awards website, and bearing in mind that she tried her absolute best to get here today, despite all the problems the ESB threw at her, that go vote for her.
And I would say also this year everybody's invited to the Irish Book Awards.
They are indeed. Yeah, you can watch it online.
We can all go together. We can all have a kind of virtual drink together beforehand. We can all go as a group. It'll be fun. Yeah,
definitely. So yeah, the information about that is on writing.ie too, and that'll be popping up very soon when we get links to the event.
Will you be virtually presenting an award on it?
I will be virtually presenting a short story.
Which I'm a judge, the short story writing.ie short story prize.
Yeah, that's it. I don't even know who's won yet. I have to wait and see. I have to do the envelope opening to make sure they've got the right name in it. Remember that one where they got the wrong name? That hasn't happened.
Yeah, I think that was the Oscars, and I think it was Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway announcing that the film of the year was Manchester. Oh no, it was La La Land, wasn't it? Yeah, and it wasn't.
Yeah. And it wasn't. Oh dear God, that was just one of those moments. That was really terrible. Oh goodness me. No, but anyway, we have come to the end of our hour.
We're out.
So next week we have Angela Marsens, who is one of Book of Chill's authors, who is
only sold how many millions of books? I mean, it's
millions, just like so many books, and I can't tell you the number, and but yeah, it's literally millions. And
it's Angela Marsens,
Marsens, yeah, she writes the D.I. Kim Stone series. I think there's about 8 or 9 of them, and she's amazing. So we're going to be talking to her about how you create a series, how you keep it moving, how you write 1 million books, and it's going to be really interesting, actually. I'm really looking forward to that one. And then, we have more people planned, don't we? Julie Cohen's definitely coming in December.
Philip Arder, we're going to be talking to, which is going to be brilliant. Yeah, we've got a lot, and
some exciting stuff coming up. So hopefully we will be able to bring people to you and it's not just us. So but hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining us, tuning out. See you soon. Bye-bye.